Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi,
Hey guys.
Jahid. Hi, how are you guys?
Good, good. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, we're doing really well. Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna share this real quick, and then we can wait a few seconds as people join, and then let's get this scene kicked off as we've got half an hour. Let people filter in for a second, and then I'll probably just kick it over to. I'll give a little intro. We'll cover the team members. We'll talk a little bit about what Nibiru chain is. We'll cover the roadmap, and then we will open up for Q&A for a few minutes, one or two questions, and then we'll be on our way. Sound good to y'all?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So, real quickly, why am I hosting this for the Nibiru folks? Well, Cerulean invested in Nibiru's last round. The reason why we did is because, I mean, look around, right? In the last 3 months since that happened, FTX went down, and what really caught our attention around this originally was the fact that you folks had a really particular vision about why a decentralized approach to derivatives cross chain needs to exist. And it's funny to get closer to you folks over the past few months and realize that a lot of that vision was spot on, as we saw the last few months of the bear market unwind with this catastrophic centralized derivative approach. So as I said, we GP at Cerulean, we are very much interested in what the Nibiru folks are building because we think that bringing institutional liquidity eventually into this space, and especially for climate assets, cross-chain is very important. And we see this team building a lot of the primitives that are necessary for that to happen. So I'll kick it over to you folks now. Unique, would you like to go first?
Sure. So my background is educational background of mostly physics and applied math for undergrad and grad school at Columbia University. So I did a lot of coding, self-taught as needed for things like interacting with astrophysics data and analyzing results, but wasn't too interested in comp sci directly. But toward the later part of college, I was working on research in gravitational lensing. So that involved looking at images of galaxies through distorted spacetime. So with that, I picked up TensorFlow and understood a lot of like novel neural network architectures over that summer, and sort of caught the machine learning bug. Started coding a lot more in general, and then um, a few years, a bunch of 10 or 12-hour days consistently later, I pivoted away from pursuing a physics PhD and was working as a machine learning engineer and then doing a lot of algorithmic trading on the side, both with stocks and in DeFi as well. So a close friend of mine recommended me to work as a data scientist or quant on a project called Similia. So this is another Cosmos app chain that essentially creates infrastructure and a platform for executing and investing in automated trading strategies on chain. So it's pretty early stage. And although I was doing data science work there, I was able to pick up a solid understanding of Cosmos, IBC, Ethereum, all that under the mentorship of Zucky, Jack Samplin, and Tariq Lewis. So this was in the later part of 2021. So Nibiru was sort of born out of the 2021 Cosmoverse in Lisbon. That's where I met Sanka, and we kind of
Awesome.
connected there discussing blockchain, trading, economics, and in the weeks that followed, started exploring ideas for what would eventually be the white paper around the end of that year. And following like I guess following that record of successes in conferences, I ended up meeting both our B lead and one of our technical co-founders, Kevin Yang, at ETH Denver last year. So we all hung out a ton at the conference and decided to enter the hackathon together. So for those that have been participating in the testnets, that's the Heisenberg account. So similar to myself, Kevin is a developer that came from like a solid Web 2 foundation. Uh, he was a or maybe the top engineering student in his class at Waterloo, and then worked several years as a senior engineer at Google and Headspace. I'll let Sanka introduce himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I think the machine learning is a good dovetail into what Sanka is good at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, please,
Yeah.
Sanka, take it
Thank
away.
you, Unique. Thanks, Jahed, for hosting us. As Unique said, that we met at Cosmoverse, the first Cosmoverse. We both have kind of very similar machine learning background. I did my PhD in applied math, heavily focused on machine learning from MIT. The first 3 years, I was actually kind of exposed to the Algorand lab, which was coming out of MIT. I initially got my foray into blockchain just from the Algorand exposure, but I left MIT and I pursued like a high frequency quant background for first 3 years. Around 2015, I moved to like Hong Kong and I was kind of doing market making on BitMEX. And I had like a common friend of mine who kind of introduced me to this family office, which were looking to do like cross-exchange arbitrages between different Asian exchanges. So initially kind of joined as a trader, but then as I had a little bit of a managerial skill managing teams, so kind of became the CEO of the firm and started like doing VC investments as well as market making. So one of my observations about the BitMEX perp was that you have to push in Bitcoin and the profit and loss was also in Bitcoin. So you have to, if the Bitcoin prices start becoming very volatile, you have to be very careful in hedging the P&L. So when Binance kind of launched the linear perps, which means that your quote asset is a stable coin and you don't have this risk of having the P&L in Bitcoin, that made me super excited that Binance was like the real platform which would scale. So I moved majority of the business from BitMEX to Binance, became a designated market maker there, where we were roughly doing a few $1 billion of volume on a weekly level. So that was a very big level exercise in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of portfolio risk, in terms of understanding how to build portfolios and hedge them. So still very, very heavy on market making. But roughly around 2020, Binance launched the Binance Launchpad, where they were incubating early stage DeFi projects. And there was a project called Thorchain, where they basically found me from some references from Binance. And I was able to build their arbitrage framework, where basically any pool which has a pricing inside Thorchain, that should maintain parity with the Binance ecosystem. So basically building that infrastructure got me exposed to the Cosmos SDK, because Thorchain is actually built on top of Cosmos SDK. And that got me heavily interested in pretty much all the DeFi projects which were about to sprung up in the Cosmos ecosystem, starting with Thorchain, Kava, Akash, Band Protocol. So it gave me a lot of understanding that how certain protocols on the ETH ecosystem, they would eventually migrate to the Cosmos ecosystem with the app advantage of it. So I was always in the mindset that if I meet the right guy as to become the co-founder, I'll be able to like spring up the own vision of DeFi Liquidity Hub on Cosmos. And that's kind of some of the background for Nibiru chain.
Very cool. So I think you touched on a lot of interesting things there, and this is not the whole team, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit too. Who are the other two co-founders of your team?
So basically, our objective of building this DeFi hub is actually to build 4 financial primitives. One is a stablecoin, one is a spot DEX, the third is a derivatives platform, and the fourth is an oracle, because we think the oracle is going to be able to bound these 3 different modules. So it's a pretty big engineering effort. And so we wanted to be very ambitious in bringing the best and the brightest in the Cosmos framework. So we reached out to Jonathan Jimeno, who was the director of engineering at Tendermint, early this year, and we basically walked him through the vision. We kind of walked him into the scale of the project, that if we can execute this, how big this could be, not just for the Cosmos ecosystem, but just DeFi in general. And he was very sold on the vision, and he found that the way we are modeling the governance token had a lot of scale in terms of the use case. So he joined us as the 4th co-founder, and he's going to be available for the next AMAs, where we might dive deep into the engineering side of the product. And one of my observations of working with Thorchain and some of the early stage projects on Cosmos was that DeFi is still very power user heavy. And how do you make a DeFi application where once you launch it, once it has its initial bootstrapping, it can actually enter into a growth phase, keep the users. We talk a lot about mercenary capital in the DeFi. Like, can we convert mercenary capital into sticky capital? So we really went down to the Silicon Valley route, talked to multiple venture capitalists, and Arjun Sethi kind of stood out in a sense that he was basically a builder in early 2000s, built a lot of Web 2 companies, sold them, joined Yahoo, post Yahoo became a venture capital partner at Social Capital, and finally in 2014 started Tribe Capital. What's good about Tribe Capital is takes a very data-centric approach to basically investing in companies as well as helping companies. They do very heavily into data-driven investments. So Arjun is basically helping us understand that we don't just launch this product, but we align the product features as well as the scaling of the product so that we are there for the next few years, and we really convert the participants from being mercenary into being sticky.
Got it. No, and I think before we jump off, Jonathan as well. I'm based in Barcelona. Jonathan's here as well. We hang out often. He played a crucial role in shipping IBC for Cosmos. He's a top-notch guy. So we'll have to get him in here and get him actually using Twitter next time.
Just to say that, so we actually released the Collections API, which is a storage module where we are actually trying to address certain, I would say, certain inefficiencies which were there in the Cosmos SDK and make it a lot less error-prone. So Jonathan was kind of very instrumental in shipping that, and it's been very, very well received. And if you guys go onto our Medium platform, you will be able to see the note on that.
Very cool. No, I think that's a good intro to who's involved, who are the players. We talked a little bit about the context, market context, why Nibiru needs to exist, why there's excitement around its testnet. I want to get into a little bit we're maybe going at this backwards, but tell us a little bit about what is Nibiru Chain, right? Like, what is the actual protocol you are building, and what are the pieces of it that address this market problem?
Yeah, so maybe I can. So I think so Unique and me, we really started this project from like a whiteboard analysis, and one of the things we were looking at was starting initially with Cosmos, that what does not exist in Cosmos and what could make the Cosmos DeFi and the liquidity scenario a lot stronger. So the immediate thing which came out to our head was, one was, this is again, we are talking about Cosmoverse 2021. So one was stablecoin and the second was leverage. And we were kind of going to attack both those problems. But as we were trying to solve the on-chain stablecoin problem, we saw that Luna got integrated to the Cosmos ecosystem, and that kind of created a lot of liquidity on the Osmosis ecosystem. So we really felt that the leverage would be a very interesting product to build, like to basically build a perpetual exchange, because we felt that if the market is very bullish, a lot of people enter the crypto DeFi ecosystem, but what if the market turns to contract? And that's where the short sellers become a very active part of the ecosystem. So if you create a platform which engages both the people who want to be long as well as the people who want to be short, that creates a completely different set of participants entering the ecosystem, right? So I will pass this on to Unique if he has to add something. But that was kind of one of the two core protocols, like the stablecoin aspect, where we felt that a lot of the PNL, which is inside the Cosmos ecosystem, you have to convert them back into Atom, then push it back to a centralized exchange. You can't take off the delta risk. Whereas if you have an on-chain stablecoin inside your ecosystem, even if you have made a PNL which has delta risk, you can convert it into stablecoin. And now if the market starts falling or rising, you're going to be able to, hedge that risk.
Yeah, so Unique, take it away. There's still a lot. You've talked about the stable coins. I don't think we've covered the need for perps, but it'd be interesting to hear how does this is going to be yet another AMM, but there's a couple of special approaches to it. I'd love to get into that a little bit before we switch to When Token, of course, and we'll kind of finish up in the last 10 minutes with Q&A.
Sure. So The V1 of Nibiru is right. So Nibiru is an app chain in the IBC landscape, um, kind of powering a DeFi liquidity hub, and initially based around four primitives or Legos. So, like you mentioned, there's a derivatives DEX called Nibi Perps, a spot DEX supporting volatile assets and stable swaps, a decentralized Oracle module, and of course a fractionally collateralized stablecoin called NUSD, which is reminiscent of Frax. So each of these Legos is meant to be extended and built upon with Cosmosm smart contracts, and there are some synergistic advantages to putting them all on the same app chain. This is all to say, one of the core tenets being as we make all this is that we want everything as off hands as possible. So, like, what do I mean by that? So, the price discovery of assets is purely on chain. We won't use things like off chain keeper bots, host any off chain DBs to interact with the contracts, or have discretionary admin calls to adjust parameters. So, everything from price discovery and order matching down to algorithmic parameter updates and liquidations will be fully on chain. So, we're excited to share some information on these designs like more thoroughly in the coming weeks.
Sweet. That sounds awesome. I think, for me as well, and this is a thing that I've told Sanka and Boris and the other folks who are involved in the project, like we from the fund perspective, we wanted to participate in this just because we see a fundamental infrastructure being built, as you mentioned, for DeFi liquidity, making this a DeFi liquidity hub. And that means that any asset, when you look out into the real world, there's a bunch of real world assets that are super illiquid. And, if you've been in, I see a couple friends in the audience here, like, my buddy Maxim, who's KVEG's listening. He's been in this space for, probably close to 10 years. And everyone's been talking about liquidity for real world assets and all this forever, right? And like MakerDAO's been making some movements here and there, but we haven't really seen the ability to hedge in a lot of asset classes, and some of those might actually, we might be able to do that with Nibiru, which is why we were like bullish, right? That's why we're like, hey, we might be able to have a climate asset derivative, a carbon derivative with actual liquidity, right? You go out there in the real world today, CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, has three options, and two of them are highly illiquid, one barely gets any usage, right? So we look at Nibiru and we're like, we could do all kinds of things here. So very, very bullish on you guys. So on that front, the last bit I wanted to touch on here is maybe Unique. You could tell us a little bit about the roadmap, and of course, when token.
Of course. So we don't have an exact launch date for you, but I can definitely outline where we're going and give an idea of the timelines we're trying to hit. So all of this in the context of looking at a May or June mainnet timeline. So the more immediate stuff before that is that we'll be conducting a multi-phase incentivized testnet, somewhat similar to the Aptos structuring for people familiar with that, but with different actions and in incentive structures, and probably a trading competition in the later phases. So we're also kickstarting an ambassador program, with where that'll incentivize things like hosting events, content creation, attracting builders to make protocols on top of the Legos that are already there. And although some of the details on this stuff is still being decided, we'll come out with write-ups and announcements on both programs and how each phase will work pretty soon. And it may be even useful to give those their own AMA. And of course, we can take questions on them in the
Awesome.
next too.
So I think but we have kind of gone through everything we wanted to cover quickly in the AMA. So I'm going to actually say I'll turn it over to anyone in the audience who wants to come up and ask a question. And I think if you raise your hand, if you have one, I can just add you as a speaker and we can go through it. I think Leonica F, you had actually raised your hand earlier. So if you still have a question or want to join, please let me know and we'll add you to the speaker list. And
Maybe,
if,
yeah.
Oh, go
No, I
ahead.
guess like if we don't have questions, I probably wanted to add a point, but I can, yeah, somebody had raised their hand, so why not we take that?
Oh, sorry, I did not see that. Who did raise their
I
hand?
think
Unique, if you see it, go ahead and add them.
Dnipro, I think, or was it a thumbs up?
I think it was a thumbs up. This, Elon Musk bought Twitter, and it's just going down the shitter,
Um,
everybody.
so I guess one of the points I wanted to kind of focus on is the leverage aspect of our protocol. So as we know, like the centralized exchanges are becoming very, it's becoming very systemic in the sense like Binance controls all the volume. So for us, we're really trying to use the automation of literally every decision making in trading of perps. So whether you're looking at liquidations, whether you're looking at price discovery, whether you're looking at if you're using a continuous curve, how do you repeg the curve so that the mark price and the index price have some kind of parity? So we are looking to basically take all these decisions, which a lot of times in centralized exchanges, they are first of all not transparent, and even on decentralized exchanges they are kind of done through an admin account or the discretionary aspect of it. So we really are trying to make sure that we come up with automated algorithmic innovation where we make sure that this is completely visible on chain and you can actually query and you can comment on it, you can look at the code, and then we can also start innovating based on that feedback, right? And I think that is something, and kind of Unique is leading that effort, that we feel very strongly that it's going to help us scale as well as create more, transparency in the whole perp operation in the market.
Very cool. And then, Unique, if you have anything to add, go for it. I think, we'll go with that, and then we'll listen for questions one more time. If not, we can end a bit early, and we'll also give you a little update on when the next AMA will be.
Sure. I guess I don't have anything to add on the perps at the moment. I guess when probably we'll try to do these every 2 or 3 weeks, but of course we have a lot of announcements coming up, so they might be a little more frequent. But, yeah.
Yeah, and to that effect, I'd add to make sure you follow Unique, follow Sanka, follow the Nibiru Chain Twitter account, and join the Discord community to stay on top of what's happening with the protocol and as we get closer to mainnet. And other than that, I think, I don't think we have any more questions, so we can end here. And thanks a lot for coming into this quick intro and an early look at the 2023 roadmap, and super bullish. And thanks for having me host, guys.
Thank you, Jahed, for hosting us. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone.